Hi guys, welcome back to the Geography Academy. This video is just going to look through a paper two, give you an idea of like timing, what it looks like, and maybe how to answer some of the questions at least. So let's jump over to a real example and just kind of walk through the whole thing together. Now, obviously, some of you are either just about to do your exams or maybe you're just new to IGCSE. Either way, this is going to help you out. So if you go and download the papers, there's loads of websites out there. So what you'll find is you've got the different years. So here you have 2022, for example. You do have exams in the summer and the winter. So this might be May, June, labeled as May, June, or it could be labeled then again as summer exams, right? So that happens as well. All right, so just make sure your course code is correct. This is for the Cambridge IGCSE, and you've got the course code down here that it matches up. But yeah, anyways, lots of good practice here for all GCSE students. As you've seen, we've got 4 papers up here. I've got the question paper. I've got the resource 1, which is the Ordnance survey map in this case. And I've got an insert here. If you just scroll down on the insert, it matches up. Usually you'll see the label, the date all match up, and should be easy to find with that. Now this one, the main resources is images, for example. So it could be kind of anything here. And then you've got the mark scheme to accompany that as well. So the mark scheme is generally pretty good, especially for short questions. Any numerical questions, it's actually pretty good. But overall then for the larger questions, anything from like 3 to 5 to 7 marks is going to be a little bit more difficult to use the mark scheme for most students just beginning at least. Okay, so let's have a talk through paper 2. Now, none of the questions, there's no 7-mark questions, for example. They're all pretty short. You've just got to be very precise with what you actually discuss. So the first thing I want to talk through today, I might zoom in on this actually, might be more helpful. We're just going to talk first about timing. Timing is absolutely crucial. I talk about this a lot in the paper 1 course that I made and in my whole GCSE course, because it's absolutely crucial. So we have 1 hour and 30 minutes, and here it says total marks is 60 marks in total. Okay, so it's not too difficult to understand. We've got 90 minutes and you've got 60 marks. So if you work that out, it's 1.5 minutes per mark. Typing's going to be atrocious at times here. All right, so that's the way you kind of work things out. Now, if you're familiar with the paper, this means before you even go in, you're going to actually be ready in terms of your timing. There's lots of advice I give about exams in the paper 1 course, but one is definitely to have your own like watch or whatever in front of you so that you can actually monitor that time. So let's say, for example, we start this exam at 9 a.m. in the morning, and I know it's going to continue on until 10:30 a.m. All right, now obviously you got to find out your own times for your own exams, but just in this example, I'm going to already know coming in as a student that by 9:30, I'm going to have a certain amount of questions done. I'm already going to have it in my head that by 10 a.m., I'm going to have a certain amount of questions done, and I'm going to have a certain amount of time to get the rest completed. So if you stick to these really strict timings, that's actually really helpful because it means lots of students then get caught up with questions or they get kind of trapped in one question and they want to make sure it's absolutely perfect. And suddenly they've spent 10 minutes when they should have spent 5 minutes on a question. And now they're going to lose 5 minutes in another question. The first section is all about map work. So we had the OS map here, Ordnance survey map. It's quite a detailed map. If you get the digital version, it's often really detailed. Now, I'm going to make a whole separate video for these skills because it takes a little bit of time to learn them, a little bit of time to practice them. But most students end up, once they get comfortable, really enjoying this section. And it's pretty much guaranteed marks for most students if you learn it correctly. So lots of different things going on there. If you haven't used them before and looks a bit intimidating, don't worry, it's not so hard. So you'll see it starts off with lots of single mark questions. You've got to be very specific about this and make sure you put in the right measurements here. You have things like descriptions, and usually you're going to have a cross section where they tell you the grid coordinates and you've got to figure out what is in between those. So it's having like a line going through the map and imagining what's there using that line and the information on the map. So you can see it builds up to a 5-mark question, and in total you have about 20 marks for that first section. That's a whole bunch of marks there for OS map work. A lot of students, well, my students anyways, will pick up full marks on that pretty much every single time. There's no reason you should drop the marks on an OS Ordnance Survey map, because if we think about it, 20 marks, so we know it's 1.5 minutes per mark for the OS map work, is 13 minutes. So 30 minutes, and I mean, it does go by, because when you think about it, you've got to discuss what you find on a map. You've got to take your time to actually read the map, look through it, go over to like the key that's over here, for example, and yeah, you've got to be able to look through that. And there's going to be things on there that you maybe haven't seen before. But that's why it's good to get really familiar with it before, that you have the least amount to get used to. For example, like solar farms, you might not have come across those in particular past paper questions, but in this one, it's included. It's a very up-to-date paper. This is the 2022, so from last June. So yeah, it's well up to date there. Go down to the next few questions. We have 5 questions. After this is a total of 6. So we have 5 questions, and they're all worth about 8 marks each, right? Well, no, usually they are worth 8 marks. So 5 questions remaining. And you've got 60 minutes. 60 minutes. All right, and yeah, you got 40 marks in total. 5 8-mark questions. Okay. So there you go. That's what we see here. And yeah, we've got to divide down our time. So it's time and a half again. So, you know, we have an hour. We have to split that out into 5, so we get 12. So it's 12 minutes per question. I generally tend to get students practicing to do these within 10 minutes and then have extra time, right? So what you do is do the first 2 in 10 minutes. So that's a total of 20 minutes. And then you've got a few minutes to go back and recheck everything, calm yourself down, read the question, and get into the last 3 then in a very kind of controlled manner. So that would be my advice. And then you've got the remaining time then to get through the other 3. So you can see here, you're going to be given a resource, lots of graphs, lots of maps, loads of data. It ties in with the paper 1 skills quite a lot as well on how to answer the different types. And I'm going to come in and actually make some videos about specific skills and ones that are come up quite often and are a little bit tricky, right? Like triangular graphs that catch students out quite a lot. You can see here we've got description questions. So just to look at the resource and to be able to take data from it, include that in your answer, very important. Sometimes for these short questions where they're just like to state what you see, you've got to go up and show that you can read the graph or the bar chart or the map. The units of measurements are really important. If they're there, fantastic. If they're not there, do not forget them. The units of measurements will always be there. And you've got to look around when they ask you to do things like describe. You've got to make sure that you use the data. For this example, on the X and Y axis, refer to the units of measurement. Make sure, say, describing the trends. Is it increasing? Do you see a change in trend, like it's increasing faster from here, or it goes from whatever it is, 117 to just under 119 there, under 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 years, right? So that's the type of thing. You want to mix and match all the data points as you're going through, show evidence, and that helps you to pick up all your marks for the describe. So like this one here, for example, we have a map question, hot deserts. Okay, so let's have a look through, right? How can we get full marks here by using a map? Hot desert. The graph at the beginning had loads of data, loads of numbers. It would be very easy to pick up marks just using all the data given. For this one, it's to describe the distribution, which a lot of students in the beginning can get caught out on until you're a little bit more used to the papers. So we want to look out for points that are kind of what they're giving us. So here we see we have degrees and we have direction, right? Degrees, direction, and degrees. Now, it's not really like there's anything else there on the map. So when you get these maps where it's lacking a lot of detail, we can look for a couple of things. For example, we can say that things are close to the coast, right? So we know what is a continent, what is a coast. We can talk about that. We could see areas that are continental, inland, and areas that are coastal. So there's, that we can discuss. But then it comes down to like, do you know the continent names? Is there regions within these areas that you might be able to describe, right? So like this area over here is coastal, but it's the West Coast, South America. So it doesn't tell us this. You should have those kind of basic knowledge. Like I'm not saying as a typical like geography student that you should know like all the capitals and flags of the world, but certainly regional areas you should know. And through your case study topics, you should understand that as well. So all that kind of information I have on the main IGCSE course as well, which you'll see links to below with all the information you need. Okay, so let's describe it. We have 3 marks. I would look to do 3 descriptions if possible. So might start off with equator. Okay, so that helps us out there. We've mentioned the degrees there. Around the tropics. So again, like if you know that those are the close to the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, that's really great. Extra little bit of information that's not given. You're still going to pick up definitely a full mark there for mentioning their location with the lines of latitude. Okay. Now, aside from that, what else can we discuss? Well, we just said there's a couple that are coastal, right? Okay, so I've just mentioned a few there. I know I've left some out, but that's fine. You don't need to mention absolutely everything. Describe the kind of trend that you're seeing and bring in evidence from the map. That's all you have to do. Third final point then, we would say something like, oh yeah, these central areas. So yeah, that's pretty much good. Yeah, and let's say Central Australia, right? So we've got that up here in this area and the one marked out there. So that's fine. We mention a trend, we bring in evidence. That's enough really for us on that one there. It's enough to pick up 3 marks for sure. Here we see like a climate graph. If you're not familiar with these type of things, then it's really useful to go back over the main course and have an idea of this. So this is something you should be able to look at, understand immediately. But if you haven't come around to it, there's going to be hints there, right? So it already tells you the key down here. Yeah, so the key telling you that mean temperature is the line, mean rainfall is going to be the bar graph. So usually we say temperature precipitation, you'll see a line graph and a bar graph together. Okay, so we see degrees Celsius, millimeters, very important to find the measurements, the units, make sure you know which is which. So state the annual range of temperature in degrees Celsius. So we know that degrees is going to be in the line. Here we see it goes up to about 28, yeah, and down to about 11. So that's good. That's our general range, 28 to 11, which means in total you're going to be working with 17 degrees Celsius. The average there. Estimate the total amount of annual rainfall, for example. So rainfall we know is the bar graphs here. Yeah, there's estimations. They're like 100 apart. So it's probably the last 2 there. Let's see, go to our key. It's about 40. So 1, 2, 3, 4 months are in 40. And then we have kind of in around 30 then, 1, 2 months are sort of in around 30 to 20. Okay. This is why you bring a calculator. And okay, so yeah, all right. And then we've got these ones left, 10, 10, 10, 10. Okay, so it's definitely not getting up past up to 390. It's definitely way above 190. So I'm just going to take there. Yeah, but when you're doing it, you can just have a calculator. Remember, you've got 12 minutes to get through these questions. It's not like you're in a major rush, right? Especially if you understand resources, you've seen them before, or you've had plenty of practice. 12 minutes is a lot of time. So the evidence in 4.2 suggests that this place is in the Southern Hemisphere. So why is it the Southern Hemisphere? Well, in this case, if any of you guys live in the northern hemisphere, the southern hemisphere, some climates are a little different, but in terms of temperatures, you should at least see some distinctive differences. So, for example, the lowest temperatures are in June, July. The highest temperatures are January and December. So this would probably indicate that we're in the southern hemisphere. You think about areas like we mentioned there. So it could be like Chile, South Africa, Australia. They're going to experience warmer temperatures in January and December. So we would probably say the southern hemisphere there. So something like this then is ideal due to the temperatures in December and January reaching 28 degrees Celsius. That's why it's in the southern hemisphere. Okay, plenty there. Describe two differences in different ways in which plants adapt to the hot desert climate. Okay, so for this one here, two different ways. They've prompted you here by putting 1 and 2, which means they kind of like force you into writing two answers. Now, this comes from your own background, your own knowledge of the subject, and it's a very particular type of detail that you need. So there's loads of answers for this one. You could have studied lots of different ways in which plants adapt to the desert, like cactus, all that type of stuff. So they want two distinctive ones. So I would say bulbous roots. Okay, so let's just skip ahead to the answers. Bulbous roots then store water to prepare for months with low precipitation in succulents, for example, and seeds can be dormant during dry seasons and then come to life during rainy seasons. There are just two distinct differences there. Now, in paper one, this could be very different. They could look for the name of a desert, they could look for the type of plant and that. So this is a bit more straightforward, as they're just two different ways that plants have adapted to a hot desert climate. Okay, so that's 8 marks there. As far as I can tell, you've picked up most of them here. But if you're worrying, okay, let's go across to the marking scheme now and have a quick look and just see how we can use this and some areas that we might find that like are a little bit vague in the marking scheme. So we'd have the first one when we're looking at the map. So it was things like mentioning the degrees from the equator, the tropics. Second point was about coastal areas, and then the next one was found in continental areas. So if you have a look here, it's a little bit vaguer than say the answers that I gave, but it generally has the main ideas, right? So it has the 20 degrees north and south, west of continents, and then it just kind of mentions the coast and the rough area there as well. So it's very like a couple of more specific areas like the Horn of Africa, for instance, and Middle East being mentioned there as well. So again, it looks a little different when it's all completed compared to the marking scheme. So that's why you don't want to rely on the marking scheme too much in this case, right? Because if you just wrote down the answers like that, yeah, you might not get full marks. 17 degrees, 290, those are fine. Yeah, just 1 marks there. And then higher temperatures, yeah, so that's describing the graph. Oh yeah, why it's the southern hemisphere. Yeah. Okay, good. Temperatures rise at the beginning and end of the year in the winter, sometimes mentioned the actual months there as well, just to make sure you're using the evidence, show that you understand. 4C succulents, bulbous roots, there you go. We've got waxy cuticles as well, stomata during the day, tick protective barks, needles, thorns, spikes, referencing there to classic cactus. And yeah, there you go. Seeds being dormant. All right. So they come up there. Now there's things that might not be on there that are still valid. That's absolutely fine. You just want to put them into a sentence format. That's another thing. Students are always like, oh, how little can I write? You've got 12 minutes. It's 3 marks. You've got roughly like 4 minutes to write 3 sentences. So I know that can be a little bit difficult when you're stuck for time, you're panicking maybe, and you've got to deal with a resource, but just try your best. If you find yourself then slipping behind on time, if you're managing it really carefully, then you can maybe cut down on the amount that you write there. But anyways, what we've written here as an example is certainly one that will get you the full 6 marks. So it's good to take your time, really. Let's see. The only other thing we haven't talked about is using the photographs, right? So we've got a couple here. Let's see, the insert. Okay, so this one here for question 3, 8 a.m., picture of the sky. 4 p.m., a picture of the sky again and how it's sort of changed in the same area. Clouds are building up, storms are forming there. On question 6, we see like an industrial area out of town on the rural urban fringe. And that's basically it for this paper. There can be more, right? Now, images are a little bit difficult because you might have dealt with diagrams, those sort of stuff. So yeah, if we have a look here, let's see how we can use it. So question 6 here, state an example of high-tech technology products. So yeah, that's anything that's quite advanced. So we could say building aircrafts, right? And that would probably be enough. So other things like mobile phones could be put in there, for example, like making mobile phones or designing software for, you know, whatever. And yeah, all that going in the high technology production. Now describe the industrial units shown. Now we're getting into the actual figure, right? So describe the industrial units shown. Let's go back to our insert. So the units shown here, and again, the actual digital copies are pretty good at this because the images are very clear. You can zoom in when you're practicing and use them that way. So I do encourage you to use that. So we see there's lots of green space. There's lots of car parks. There's lots of roads. The buildings are very small. There's one here that's 3 stories, but mainly it's like 1 to 2 stories tall. Lots and lots of green space there. And they look like they're new modern buildings. They're all very rectangular. There's no like historical presence of like architecture there. It's even a lake in the middle, right? A lovely spot, it seems. All right, we can see surrounding things as well. It's good to note is like the housing that are there, suburbs. That's usually very attractive as well to the area. And of course, it's right on the rural urban fringe. So after that motorway, it kind of gets into then farm areas. And it looks like a motorway anyway. It's got a couple of lanes. It's a pretty big road. So yeah, we can pretty much assume that's a motorway there. Okay, well, let's see how this translates then to answering the questions. Describe the unit shown. Okay, so we could say, so that's the buildings described. Okay, so that might get me 1 there. Yeah, okay, so that'll be fine. I could even put things like modern, large, and 1 to 2 story buildings. All right, that'll pick me up to 2 points there, just a description, but yeah, you just want to look at key characteristics of the units themselves. The next one here, we can see 2 reasons why it was chosen, further location. So now you can look at internal factors, but you can look at external factors. Like we mentioned, for example, the motorway that was there, always a really important one. So here we have, it was built close to the motorway, which gives it access to bring raw materials in and to export finished products easily. A large space for each unit allows them to expand their physical size and for businesses to grow. Other things we might say is that, you know, companies want to be there, right? So they want to be there because they're close to other companies that are in a similar industry, which they might be able to share certain technologies or devices, or they might be able to exchange experts. And this creates then a more advantageous position for all of them. Explain why transport costs are not the most important factors when located in high industry. It's 3 marks. So I would say like 2 developed points is probably enough here, or you could do like 3 basic points. So I should look at this question and think about that. Now, also when you're going through this, they've highlighted that, but just be really sure that you're understanding the question, okay? So in this one, it's why transportation is not the main important factor, the cost of transportation. So here we can look at it from a number of perspectives. I would say try to, you know, make it have a little bit of variety. So one point that I'm going to write is based on the transport cost. And then the other point I'm going to make is about something else that could be more important than that, right? So divide them up and make sure you've developed both statements. So I'll fast forward to that. So 2 developed points here. Transport costs of high technology industries are not as important because the raw materials and also the finished products are going to be very light, easy to import, export, reduces the importance. And then on the other side, I say what else is important that's not got to do with transport. So it's more important to attract highly skilled workforce, provide a professional working place that has green space, less traffic congestion, pollution, and is surrounded by other tech industries as well. So that makes it more attractive to them. So in that case, there are 2 very distinctive different points. One that agrees about the transportation not being that the most important, and the other one then that tries to explain another factor that is more important. Now you could have put anything there, but that's it. That's really what you need. Two well-developed points should be more than enough there. And you could have three like undeveloped statements as well there. Okay, so I hope that helped just a little bit. Anyways, if it did, just like, subscribe, all that, so I know that people are actually using these videos. And yeah, look down below. I've got loads of resources either out now or coming out soon. So I'll leave all the links at the bottom there. All right, good luck, guys.